The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by the distant glow of stars that seemed too far away to matter. In this cold emptiness, 12 alien ships drifted like sleeping giants. Their hulls gleamed with a strange, blue light that pulsed weakly. Like a dying heartbeat, Commander Velthka stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring out at the void through crystalline windows that showed him only emptiness. His tall, slender form cast long shadows across the dimly lit command center. The Zephyrian skin had a pale silver color that seemed to shimmer in the low light, and his large eyes reflected worry and fear. "How long do we have left?" he asked his second-in-command, a smaller Zephyrian named Kethrin, who worked at a console that sparked and flickered with failing power. "The life support systems are failing faster than we calculated," Kethrin replied, his voice carrying the weight of bad news. "Perhaps 10 more cycles, maybe less. The quantum cores are completely dead. We cannot restart them." Velthka closed his eyes and felt the weight of responsibility press down on him. 12 ships, 3,000 crew members, all depending on him to find a solution that did not exist. The Zephyrians had been traveling for months, exploring space. Far from their homeworld for the first time in their history, they had been so careful, so prepared, yet one moment of quantum drive failure had doomed them all. "Begin the ritual preparations," he said quietly. "If we must drift into the final sleep, we will do so with honor." The bridge crew moved slowly to carry out his orders. The ritual of final drift was an ancient Zephyrian tradition. When death in space was certain, crews would enter permanent stasis chambers rather than suffer the slow agony of suffocation or starvation. It was considered a peaceful way to die, drifting through space forever in dreamless sleep. Meanwhile, 3 light-years away, the human research vessel New Horizon moved through space at a steady pace. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, reading reports on his tablet while his crew carried out routine surveys of the star system they were exploring. The ship was not large or fancy, but it was solid and reliable, just like the 42 people who served on it. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors," called out Dr. Amy Chun from her science station. She was a young woman with short black hair and bright eyes that always seemed curious about everything around her. "There are some unusual energy readings about 2 light-years from our position." Jake looked up from his tablet and walked over to her station. "What kind of energy readings?" "That's the strange part," Amy said, pointing to the data on her screen. "The patterns are definitely artificial, but they don't match any known technology. The signatures are very weak, like whatever is making them is running out of power." Lieutenant Ben Taylor, the ship's first officer, joined them at the science station. He was a careful man who always thought about safety first. "Could be a trap," he said with concern. "Pirates sometimes use fake distress signals to lure ships into ambush." Jake studied the readings for a moment. The energy patterns were unlike anything he had ever seen. They pulsed in a rhythm that seemed almost organic, like a living thing that was slowly dying. "How long would it take us to reach those coordinates?" "About 18 hours if we push the engines," Amy replied. "But sir, if Lieutenant Taylor is right about this being a trap ... then we'll be ready for one," Jake said firmly. "But what if it's not a trap? What if someone really needs help out there?" The 3 officers stood in silence for a moment, each thinking about the decision they faced. First contact with alien life had always been a possibility, but it had remained theoretical until now. Earth had procedures for such situations, but they were mostly guidelines written by people who had never actually met an alien. "Set course for those coordinates," Jake decided. "We'll approach carefully and see what we find. If it's a trap, we'll be ready to fight. If it's someone in trouble, we'll see what we can do to help." The New Horizon changed course and began its journey toward the mysterious energy signatures. As the hours passed, the readings became stronger and clearer. Amy worked at her station, trying to decode the patterns and understand what they meant. "Captain, I think these might be distress signals," she announced after several hours of analysis. "The patterns repeat every few minutes, and they're getting weaker each time." Whatever is sending them is definitely losing power. Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. If someone was really in trouble out there, every minute counted. How much? Longer until we reach them? 6 hours, sir. Push the engines harder. I want to get there as fast as possible. The ship's engines hummed louder as they increased speed. The crew worked with quiet efficiency, knowing that they might be heading into the unknown. Some checked weapon systems, others reviewed first contact protocols, and a few simply stared out the windows at the stars ahead. When they finally arrived at the coordinates, the sight that greeted them was both beautiful and terrible. 12 alien ships floated in the darkness, their hulls covered in intricate crystal formations that caught and reflected what little light existed in the void. The ships were clearly of advanced design, with smooth curves and elegant lines that no human engineer had ever imagined, but the beauty was overshadowed by the obvious signs of distress. The ships drifted without power, their crystalline hulls flickering weakly like dying candles. There was no organized formation, no signs of active movement. They looked like ancient artifacts floating in a museum of space. "My God," whispered Amy as she stared at the alien fleet. "They're beautiful, but they're in serious trouble." Jake stood at the front of the bridge, looking out at the stranded ships. Somewhere in those vessels were living beings who needed help. The question was whether humanity was ready to provide it. "All stations, prepare for a possible first contact," he ordered. "We're going to help them." The New Horizon moved slowly toward the alien fleet, its crew working with nervous energy. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the strange ships grow larger on the main screen. Each vessel was different from the others, but they all shared the same crystal-like design that seemed to grow naturally rather than being built by machines. "Try all standard communication frequencies," Jake ordered. "See if we can get any response." Dr. Amy Chen worked at her station, sending out greeting signals in every format Earth had ever developed. Radio waves, laser pulses, mathematical sequences, even simple patterns of light. The alien ships remained silent, their only response. The weak distress signals that continued to pulse from their hulls. "Captain, I'm not getting any direct response," Amy reported. "But the distress signals are changing. The patterns are becoming more complex, like they're trying to communicate something new." Tony Rodriguez, the ship's chief engineer, looked up from his console where he had been studying the alien technology. "Sir, I'm picking up some interesting readings from their ships. The power levels are definitely failing, but the technology is incredible. I've never seen anything like it." "What can you tell about their condition?" Jake asked. "Not good," Tony replied, shaking his head. "Whatever powers those ships is shutting down. From what I can see, they've got maybe hours left before total system failure." Jake felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Somewhere in those ships were living beings who were about to die, and he was the only one who might be able to help them. "Keep trying to communicate. There has to be a way to talk to them." Amy worked for another hour, trying different approaches to decode the alien signals. She ran the patterns through every translation program the ship had, looking for mathematical relationships or common concepts that might bridge the gap between species. "Captain, I think I found something," she said excitedly. "The signals aren't just random. They're showing us pictures, basic shapes, and numbers. Look at this." On her screen, simple geometric shapes appeared and disappeared in sequence. Triangles, circles, squares, followed by mathematical equations that any intelligent species would recognize. "They're trying to teach us their language," Jake realized. "Send back the same patterns, but add our own number system. Show them we understand." The response came quickly. The alien signals became more complex, showing star charts and what looked like technical diagrams. Amy worked frantically to decode the meaning, building a basic translation system one symbol at a time. "I think I can establish basic communication now," she announced after another hour of work. "The language is incredibly complex, but I can manage simple concepts." "Open a channel," Jake ordered. "Let's see if we can talk to them." Amy sent out a carefully crafted message using the symbols. they had learned. The response that came back was hesitant at first, then stronger as the aliens realized they were actually communicating with the human ship. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the alien flagship. The being who appeared was tall and slender, with silver skin that seemed to glow in the dim light. His large eyes showed intelligence and deep worry. "I am Commander Velthka of the Zephyrian Exploration Fleet," the alien said through the translation system. His voice sounded strange, with musical tones that the computer struggled to convert into human speech. "You are not of any species, we." "No, what do you want with us?" "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel New Horizon," Jake replied carefully. "We detected your distress signals and came to see if we could help." "Are you in trouble?" Velthka's expression was hard to read, but his body language suggested surprise and suspicion. "Help? We do not understand this concept between species. What do you gain from helping us?" Jake was taken aback by the question. "We don't gain anything. We're here because you need help and we might be able to provide it." "That's what we do." "This makes no sense," Velthka said, shaking his head. "Species exist for themselves. They do not risk their own safety for strangers." "Well, humans do," Jake replied simply. "Can you tell us what happened to your ships?" Velthka stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. "Our quantum drive cores have failed. We cannot repair them, and we cannot call for help. Our power systems are dying. Soon we will begin the final drift." "What's the final drift?" Amy asked from her station. "When death in space is certain, we enter permanent sleep chambers," Velthka explained. "It is better than slowly dying as life support fails. We have accepted our fate." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "How long do you have?" "Perhaps 8. Of your hours, maybe less?" "The youngest of our crew have already entered the chambers. Soon the rest will follow." "No," Jake said firmly. "There has to be another way. Our engineers could look at your ships, see if there's something we can do." Velthka's eyes widened in disbelief. "Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your ships use simple fusion drives. How could you possibly repair quantum cores that your species has never seen?" "Maybe we can't," Jake admitted. "But we have to try. We won't just sit here and watch you die if there's any chance we can help." The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Why would you do this? Why would you risk your own ship and crew for beings you have never met?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Jake answered. "Because every life has value, and because maybe there's something we can figure out together that neither of us could do alone." Velthka looked at something off-screen, then back at Jake. "My crew believes this is impossible. They say we should not trust aliens who claim to help without reason." "I understand their fear," Jake said. "But we're not asking you to trust us completely. Just let us try. What do you have to lose?" The alien commander considered this. "Very well, you may send a small team to examine our primary drive systems. But know that when you see the complexity of our technology, you will understand why this is hopeless." "Maybe," Jake replied. "But humans have a saying, it's not over until it's over. We'll keep trying until the very last moment." As the communication ended, Jake turned to his crew. "Tawny, prepare an engineering team. Amy, keep working on the translation. Systems, we're going to need all the help we can get." The crew moved with new purpose, driven by the knowledge that they were humanity's first ambassadors to an alien species. They also knew that their first act would either be saving lives or watching helplessly as an entire civilization died in the cold darkness of space. The clock was ticking, and somewhere in those failing ships, 3,000 alien lives hung in the balance. Tony Rodriguez floated through the connecting tunnel that linked the New Horizon to the Zephyrian flagship. The alien ship felt different from any human vessel he had ever been on. The walls seemed to pulse with faint energy, and the air had a strange metallic taste that made his nose tingle. "Stay close and keep your equipment scanners running," he told his team of 3 engineers who followed behind him. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." The Zephyrian engineer who met them was smaller than Commander Velthka, with the same silver skin but darker markings around his large eyes. "I am Hithmore," he said through the translation device. "I will show you our quantum cores, though. I fear you will not understand them." Tony nodded respectfully. "We might surprise you. Sometimes a fresh pair of eyes can see things differently." Hithmore led them through corridors that curved and twisted in ways that seemed to follow no human logic. The walls were covered in crystal formations that glowed with soft blue light, providing the only illumination in the dying ship. "Here," Hithmore said, stopping before a massive door that opened with a sound like musical chimes. "This is our primary quantum core chamber." Tony stepped into the room and stopped breathing for a moment. The chamber was enormous, filled with floating crystal structures that hung in the air without any visible support. Each crystal was the size of a small building, and they all pulsed with energy that seemed to flow between them like liquid light. "This is incredible," whispered Lisa Park, one of Tony's engineers. "The crystals are generating their own gravity fields to stay suspended. The quantum cores create controlled tiers in space-time," Hithmore explained. "This allows us to fold space and travel faster than light. But the containment fields that hold the tiers stable have collapsed. Without them, the cores will eventually destroy themselves and everything around them." Tony walked carefully around the chamber, his scanner recording everything. The technology was far beyond anything humans had ever built, but the basic principles was starting to make sense to him. "The containment fields need constant energy to stay stable, right?" "Yes," Hithmore replied, sounding surprised. "When our main power systems failed, the fields began to weaken. We have tried everything to restore them, but our backup systems are not strong enough." "What if we could boost your power supply?" Tony asked. "Our fusion reactors aren't as advanced as your quantum cores, but they're very stable." "Maybe we could create a temporary bridge to give your systems the energy they need." Hithmore's eyes widened. "That would be extremely dangerous. Human and Zephyrian technologies have never been combined. The interaction could destroy both our ships." "But it might work," Tony said with growing excitement. "Let me get our science officer down here to look at this." Back on the New Horizon, Dr. Amy Chun listened to Tony's report with fascination. "A quantum containment field powered by fusion reactors," she mused. "It's crazy, but it might actually work. The energy signatures would be completely different, but if we can match the frequency patterns." "Can you do it?" Jake asked from his captain's chair. "I think so," Amy replied, "but we'll need more than just our ship. This is going to require a lot of power and probably some equipment we don't have." Jake nodded and turned to his communications. "Officer, open a channel to Earth Command, Priority Alpha." The response from Earth was faster than anyone expected. Within an hour, Admiral Patricia Stone herself appeared on the main screen, her weathered face showing intense interest. "Captain Morrison, you're telling me you've made contact with an alien species and they need our help?" "Yes, ma'am." 12 ships, 3,000 crew members. They'll all die if we can't help them repair their quantum drives." Admiral Stone was quiet for a moment. "What do you need?" "Engineering teams, fusion reactor specialists, and maybe some of our newer ships with more powerful generators. This is going to be a major operation. Consider it done. I'm dispatching 7 ships to your location immediately. They'll be there in 36 hours. "Thank you, Admiral." "Don't thank me yet, Captain. If this works, you'll have made history. If it doesn't, you might have started a war with a species that has technology we can't even understand." The communication ended, leaving Jake to contemplate the weight of what they were attempting. On the Zephyrian ships, time was running out. Several of the smaller vessels had already gone completely dark, their crews entering the final sleep. Chambers as life support failed, but when the human ships arrived, they brought more than just equipment. The convoy included not only military vessels but also civilian ships whose crews had volunteered to help. Merchant captains, mining engineers, even a luxury liner that had been converted to carry supplies. "Look at that," Amy said, staring at the screen showing the approaching human fleet. They all came to help people they've never met. Commander Velthka watched the human ships arrive with confusion and wonder. I do not understand your species, he told Jake during one of their communication sessions. These ships came from different parts of your territory? They do not know us, yet they risk themselves for strangers. That's what we do, Jake replied simply. When someone needs help, we help. It doesn't matter if they're human or not. The work began immediately. Human and Zephyrian engineers worked side by side, sharing knowledge and techniques despite the language barriers. The aliens were amazed by human creativity and willingness to try new approaches, while the humans were fascinated by the elegant efficiency of Zephyrian technology. Dr. Amy Chun worked with a young Zephyrian scientist named Myth-Tel to design the power coupling system. The aliens' mathematical abilities were incredible, but she was impressed by Amy's practical approach to problem solving. Your species thinks in ways we never considered, Myth-Tel said as they worked on the calculations. You see solutions where we see only problems. Maybe that's because we're used to making things work with whatever we have, Amy replied. Humans have always been good at improvising. The first test of the hybrid system was scheduled for the next day. If it worked, the Zephyrian ships would have enough power to repair their quantum cores and save their crews. If it failed, the explosion might destroy both fleets. As the crews prepared for the test, something unexpected was happening. Humans and Zephyrians were beginning to understand each other not just as different species, but as individuals with hopes, fears, and dreams. The barrier between them was dissolving, replaced by something neither species had expected to find in the darkness of space. Friendship. The first attempt to restart the Zephyrian quantum cores ended in failure. Tony Rodriguez watched the energy readings spike dangerously high before the safety systems shut everything down. Sparks flew from the control panels and the crystal formations in the chamber flickered like dying stars. The power coupling is unstable, reported Chris Davis, a young technician who had volunteered for the most dangerous job of monitoring the fusion reactor connections. The energy patterns between our technology and theirs don't match up the way we calculated. Hithmore, the Zephyrian engineer, studied the readings with deep concern. The quantum field fluctuations are worse than we expected. If we try to force more power through the system, we risk a cascade failure that could destroy both fleets. Dr. Amy Chen worked frantically at her portable computer, recalculating the energy transfer equations. Maybe we're trying to push too much power too fast. What if we gradually increase the flow over several hours instead of trying to restart everything at once? We don't have several hours, Tony reminded her. 3 more Zephyrian ships went dark during the night. Their crews are already in the sleep chambers. Jake Morrison stood in the quantum core chamber, watching his people work alongside the aliens. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a physical force. Every decision he made could mean the difference between life and death for thousands of beings. We try Amy's approach, he decided. Slow and steady increase in power. If we see any signs of instability, we shut it down immediately. The second attempt began with careful precision. Human fusion reactors slowly fed power into the Zephyrian containment systems, while both crews monitored every reading. For the first hour, everything looked promising. The containment fields began to stabilize, and the quantum cores started to pulse with renewed energy. Then something went wrong. Energy surge in Section 4, Chris Davis called out from his position near the primary coupling. The field generators are overloading. The chamber filled with a high-pitched whine as the crystal formations began to vibrate violently. Warning lights flashed on every console, and the translation systems struggled to keep up with the rapid exchange of technical information between human and Zephyrian engineers. Shut it down, Jake ordered. Emergency stop on all systems. But when Chris tried to disconnect the power coupling, the controls wouldn't respond. The fusion reactor had locked into a feedback loop with the quantum cores, and the energy was building toward a dangerous peak. I can't stop it from here, Chris shouted over the rising noise. The manual disconnect is right next to the core chamber. Someone has to get in there and shut it down by hand. Tony started toward the chamber, but Chris was already moving. The young technician ran into the area where energy discharges were dancing between the crystal formations like deadly lightning. "Chris, get back here," Tony yelled. "The radiation levels are too high?" "Someone has to do it," Chris replied, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "I'm the smallest. I can get through the gaps between the crystals faster than anyone else." Jake watched in horror as Chris navigated through the dangerous energy field, dodging the wild discharges that could kill him instantly. The young man reached the manual disconnect switch and began the shutdown sequence, even as the energy around him grew more intense. "I've got it," Chris called out. "Shutting down the coupling now." The chamber began to quiet as the power flow stopped, but Chris was still trapped in the middle of the energy field. A final discharge struck him, and he collapsed to the floor. Tony and two Zephyrian engineers rushed in to pull him to safety. Chris was unconscious but alive, his body showing signs of severe energy exposure. The human medic worked quickly, too. Stabilize him while the alien medical specialists provided assistance with their own healing technology. Commander Velthka, who had been watching from the observation deck, came down to the chamber floor. He knelt beside Chris's unconscious form, his large eyes filled with an emotion that needed no translation. "He could have died," the alien commander said quietly. "He risked everything to save us all. I have never seen such behavior between species." "Chris is a good man," Jake replied. "He did what any of us would have done." "No," Velthka said, shaking his head. "This is not normal behavior. Your species is different. You value life, even alien life, above your own safety. We have never encountered such thinking." Over the next few hours, as Chris recovered in the medical bay, something remarkable happened. The Zephyrian crew began to interact with the humans in ways that went beyond the technical cooperation. They shared stories of their homeworld, showed images of their families, and asked questions about human culture and history. Dr. Amy Shun found herself in the ship's common area, playing human music for a group of fascinated Zephyrians. The aliens had never heard anything like it, and they responded by demonstrating their own art forms, creating beautiful patterns of light and sound that seemed to dance in the air. "Your mathematics are expressed through harmonics," one of the Zephyrians explained. "We find this concept beautiful but strange. Our art is based on geometric relationships." "Maybe that's the key," said Mithtel, the young Zephyrian physicist who had been working closely with Amy. "We've been trying to force our technologies to work exactly the same way. But what if we combine them differently? What if we used human fusion reactions to create harmonic resonance with our quantum fields?" Amy looked at the young alien with excitement. "You mean instead of trying to power your systems directly, we use our reactors to sing in harmony with your quantum cores?" "Exactly," Mithtel replied. "The frequencies would support each other instead of fighting." The third attempt was different from the first two. Instead of trying to force massive amounts of power through the system, the human and Zephyrian engineers worked together to create a delicate balance of energies. The fusion reactors provided steady, reliable power, while the quantum cores used that energy to rebuild their containment fields gradually. This time, it worked. One by one, the Zephyrian ships began to come back to life. Lights flickered on, life. Support systems restarted, and the crystal formations began to pulse with renewed energy. The crews who had been preparing for the final sleep woke up to find their ships saved. In the flagship's quantum core chamber, humans and Zephyrians worked together to fine-tune the hybrid system. The technology was unlike anything either species had imagined, but it was working beautifully. "We did it," Tony said, watching the energy readings stabilize at optimal levels. "We actually did it." Commander Velthka stood beside Jake, both of them watching their crews celebrate together. "You have given us back our lives," the alien commander said. "But more than that, you have shown us something we never knew existed. The willingness to help strangers, to risk everything for others, to work together despite our differences." "That's what neighbors do," Jake replied with a smile. "And I think we're going to be very good neighbors." The rescue operation was complete, but both species knew that this was just the beginning of something much larger. They had found each other in the darkness of space, and neither would ever be the same again. Chris Davis opened his eyes to find himself in a medical bay that looked different from any human facility he had ever seen. The walls glowed with soft blue light, and strange crystalline devices monitored his vital signs. He tried to sit up, but gentle hands pushed him back down. "Easy there," said Dr. Amy Chun, who was sitting beside his bed. "You've been unconscious for 2 days. The energy exposure was pretty severe." "Did it work?" Chris asked, his voice weak but determined. "The Zephyrians okay?" Amy smiled. "See for yourself." She helped him turn toward the large window that showed the space outside. Chris gasped in wonder. The Zephyrian fleet was alive again, their ships glowing with renewed energy. The crystal formations on their hulls pulsed with steady light, and he could see small shuttles moving between the vessels as crews worked to complete repairs. "All 12 ships are operational," Amy told him. "Life support is stable, quantum cores are running smoothly, and about 2,000 crew members who were in the sleep chambers have been safely awakened." "What about the others?" Chris asked with concern. "Some had been in the chambers too long, but the Zephyrian medical technology is incredible. They're helping us learn new healing techniques, and we're sharing our knowledge with them. Most of the crew will make full recoveries." Chris closed his eyes with relief. "So they're going home now?" "Actually, that's what we need to talk to you about." Captain Jake Morrison entered the medical bay, followed by Commander Velthka, the alien leader. Looked different somehow, more relaxed and confident than he had during the crisis. "Chris," Jake said, sitting down beside the bed, "I wanted to thank you personally. What you did in that chamber saved all of us. You're a hero." Chris shook his head weakly. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Velthka said, his voice carrying deep emotion even through the translation device. "What you did was something my people have never experienced. You risked your life for strangers, for aliens you had never met. This act has changed how we see the universe." "I don't understand," Chris said, looking confused. Velthka moved closer to the bed. "For thousands of years, my people have lived in isolation. We believed that each species must survive on its own, that cooperation between different kinds of life was impossible. But you have shown us something different. You have shown us that beings can care for each other across the boundaries of species." "Zephyrians have made a decision," Jake explained. "Instead of returning home immediately, they want to continue their exploration mission, but they want to do it with us, as partners." Chris's eyes widened. "You mean humans and Zephyrians working together?" "A joint exploration fleet," Amy said with excitement. "Imagine what we could discover together. Their technology and our creativity, their knowledge and our determination. We could explore parts of the galaxy that neither species could reach alone." Commander Velthka nodded. "Your Captain Morrison and I have been discussing the details. We would share our quantum drive technology with humanity, and you would share your fusion reactor designs with us. Together, we could build ships that combine the best of both our sciences." But there's more than just the technology," Jake added. "We're talking about a real partnership. Cultural exchange, shared colonies, joint research projects. This could be the beginning of something amazing." Over the following days, as Chris recovered and the two fleets prepared for their joint mission, remarkable things began to happen. Human and Zephyrian engineers worked together to upgrade both sets of ships with hybrid technology. The human vessels received quantum drive boosters that would allow them to keep up with the Zephyrian fleet, while the alien ships installed fusion backup systems that would prevent them from ever being stranded again. Dr. Amy Chun spent hours with Mithtel, the young Zephyrian physicist, developing new scientific instruments that combined human and alien approaches to space exploration. Their friendship had grown into a real partnership, and they were excited about the discoveries they might make together. "Your species sees patterns we miss," Mithtel told Amy as they worked on a new star mapping device. "You find creative solutions where we see only problems. Together we can accomplish things neither of us could do alone." Tony Rodriguez worked with Hithmore, to design new safety systems that would prevent the kind of cascade failure that had nearly destroyed the Zephyrian fleet. The alien engineer had become fascinated by human engineering principles, especially the way humans always built backup systems for their backup systems. "Your species plans for failure," Hithmore observed. "You assume things will go wrong and prepare for it. This is wisdom we had forgotten." Captain Jake Morrison and Commander Velthka spent long hours planning the joint exploration mission. They had to work out everything from command structures to communication protocols, but they found that their species complemented each other well. Human flexibility balanced Zephyrian precision, while alien technology enhanced human determination. "We have learned something important from this experience," Velthka told Jake during one of their planning sessions. "Isolation is not strength, it is weakness. By shutting ourselves off from others, we limited our own growth." "And we've learned that there are others out there who think differently than we do," Jake replied. "Your people's knowledge and technology will help us become better explorers and better neighbors in the galaxy." The day finally came when both fleets were ready to depart. Chris Davis, now fully recovered, stood on the bridge of the New Horizon as the ships prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel. The sight was incredible to behold. 12 Zephyrian vessels, their crystal hulls now reinforced with human design. Backup systems floated in perfect formation. Alongside them, 7 human ships glowed with the blue light of their new quantum drive boosters. The two fleets had become one, a symbol of cooperation between species that had never been attempted before. "All ships report ready for quantum jump," announced the communications officer. Jake looked at the main screen where Commander Velthka's image smiled back at him. "Ready when you are, partner." "Jump coordinates locked in," Velthka replied. "Destination, the unexplored systems of the Andromeda Spiral. Together we will see what wonders await us." The combined fleet engaged their drives and disappeared into the quantum tunnel, leaving behind the empty space where two species had first met as strangers and become friends. They were heading into the unknown, but they were no longer alone. In the years that followed, the joint human Zephyrian exploration fleet would discover 17 new star systems, make contact with 3 other alien species, and establish the first interstellar alliance in galactic history. But none of those achievements would have been possible without the simple human instinct to help others in need. Sometimes, the greatest adventures begin with the smallest acts of kindness.